I know it's someone that Siphamandla often talks to get reaction to political concerns and political questions. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu joining us now to talk about the announcement of Nomusa Dube-Ncube, announcement as KZN Premier candidate this afternoon. Bheki Mngomezulu, Prof, good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us. So, as we've just been hearing from Siphamandla, it seems like quite a resume, quite a CV to have coming into a position like this. Many saying well-deserved, former Kokta MEC, experience and work ethic, former Deputy Provincial Secretary, and we can go on and on. But in Nomusa Dube-Ncube's own words, a crippling crisis is what's awaiting for her. Does she have the credentials to handle a crippling crisis in KZN?
No, thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers as well. Honestly speaking, there is no premier who would assume this position and be classified as a perfect premier, because we have none across the country and across the globe. But given the experience that you have just alluded to, which also Bheki Mngomezulu alluded to, in fact, of the three candidates that were nominated by the province, Nomusa Dube-Ncube ticked all the boxes for me. In fact, two days ago, I was asked by some of your colleagues to put my neck on the block as to who would emerge victorious. And I didn't mince my words. I said Nomusa Dube-Ncube would definitely be victorious for the reasons we have just cited. But then I do understand that her mandate is a bit a heavy load to carry for a number of reasons. One, KwaZulu-Natal, as the biggest province of the ANC, attracts the attention of the entire leadership of the ANC and the entire membership of the ANC, honestly. So it means then that the responsibilities that she is entrusted with are much higher than the ones that other premiers in other provinces would have. Because you might have seen the reception that the president was about to receive until then the new chair of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, Siboniso Duma, saved the day, as it were, by calming the emotions down and making sure that the president was allowed to deliver his closing remarks. So the reality of the matter is Nomusa Dube-Ncube has work cut out, but with the experience that she has, I think she'll be equal to the task.
Let's just talk about the political side of the ANC and KZN for a moment, Prof. I'm sure you won't mind as well, because you alluded to the welcome that the ANC president almost got in KZN. We know how unhappy the ANC KZN branch was coming to the policy conference as well. We've already seen having to come out and defend himself, the outgoing Premier, Sihle Zikalala, having to talk about a Zuma camp, a Ramaphosa camp. How relevant is the camps, the factions within the ANC KZN now with Nomusa Dube-Ncube involved? Where does she sit in all of this mess between the former president, the current president, the Taliban and the RET faction? It's difficult to keep up.
No, that's a very interesting question indeed. The reality of the matter is the challenges that KZN is facing are not specific to KZN. They are a reflection of a national situation whereby the party has been factionalized, and as well as the alliance as well. So basically, the reality of the matter here is that the kinds of issues that Nomusa Dube-Ncube will have to deal with are not necessarily different from what is happening elsewhere, except that they are of a great importance in KwaZulu-Natal, given the political context we have just alluded to. The Zuma factor will always be a factor in KwaZulu-Natal, as much as it is a factor in other provinces, but it will remain a factor in KwaZulu-Natal. I was saying to a number of people before the 2021 local government elections that if you roll Zuma out and you try to silence him, you are basically doing that at your own peril. And that is exactly what happened in the 2021 local government election. Because of the treatment that the former president has received and the disgruntlement from his supporters, obviously that has not gone down well with the majority of the people, and therefore has negatively affected the ANC. Now, on the issue of the outgoing Premier Sihle Zikalala, he was correct in saying that there is a perception out there that he didn't support the former president. And the moment you don't support the former president, rightly or wrongly so, then of course you are digging your own grave, politically speaking. not necessarily in a literal sense. Because you might have seen that during the regional conferences, those were aligned to the RT faction and now called the Taliban. They emerged victorious in a number of those regional conferences. And by the time you went to this elective policy conference of the ANC, it was almost a foregone conclusion that the RT faction was going to emerge victorious. Now, Nomsa Dube-Ncube is the premier-elect. All we are waiting for is for the legislature to formalize that. Immediately thereafter, she will be expected to unify the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal and also to make sure that government gets the respect that it deserves, and while at the same time balancing the scales, as it were. Some of the issues she will have to deal with, for instance, is the issue of gender equity, the issue of the youth, and then the many other issues they've just referred to, unemployment and all the like. So basically, she has her work cut out, I would say.
It certainly does as well. We're going to come back to the politics of this in just a moment, Prof, because I think you made such an interesting point I'd like to pick up on. Before we get to that, though, of course, August being Women's Month as well, we cannot defer away from the fact, and this has got nothing to do with the fact that Nomsa Dube-Ncube is a woman, but it would be remiss of us not to talk about the fact that KZN now does have an incoming female premier for the province. Is there any significance as that, or in the world of politics, in the world of local, municipal and provincial politics, does that not make a difference?
No, absolutely it does, for a number of reasons. The most important of them is that when you look at the State SA's reports, they indicate that there are more women than there are men in this country. But then when you go to the leadership positions, women are not well represented. And that then, of course, invokes this issue of cadre deployment. You may have cadre deployment, but you don't have to deploy people even if they don't have those requisite skills. In this case that we're talking about, you can argue and say, all right, Nomsa Dube-Ncube is being deployed as a woman, she's being deployed maybe as a cadre. Okay, that is correct. But the reality of the matter is she has the requisite skills to do the job and execute her mandate. That's what we need. I was saying to people that there is no problem with cadre deployment per se. The only problem is if you deploy people who lack those requisite skills. In this case, Dube-Ncube is a woman, we tick the boxes. She's a cadre, we tick the boxes. She has the experience, we tick the boxes. Academically, she's sound, we also tick that box. So basically, she's an all-rounder, I would say. And in fact, it is very important. But the challenge, to answer a part of your question, the challenge that she's going to have is that on the one hand, she will be genuinely wanting to see women move up the ladder. But then others might interpret that negatively and say she's promoting women just because she's a woman, which shouldn't be the case.
It's going to be a very tricky balancing act, Professor. I'm going to have to ask you to leave it there for the moment because I think you and I are going to have many discussions about this, but such a good point on all of the issues we were discussing. Prof, it's always good to have you with us. I apologize for cutting you off for the moment. There's a reason for that. Political analyst Bheki Mngomezulu talking about the incoming premier of KZN, Nomsa Dube-Ncube. The reason we've